great to be here at the Meliá Desert Palm. Thanks a million for sitting down with me.
Good morning, Mark. Thank you so much for coming up and seeing us.
Delighted. Listen, I'd love to start with getting a little bit of background on yourself, and I suppose what inspired you to get into the wonderful world of hospitality?
The wonderful world of hospitality. Funny story, actually. I totally didn't see myself in this industry in the beginning. I wish I could say I've always wanted it and it was my calling, but actually when I was younger, I wanted to be an English language and drama teacher. That was my thing when I was about 14, and my boyfriend's mum at the time was a teacher, and I thought that would be cool. And I loved to act. I was a big Amdram, that was my thing. And unfortunately, my A-levels didn't work out quite like I expected them to. Massive disaster. And my world fell apart for about 5 minutes. And I was like, this is a disaster. And then, funnily enough, there was a new hotel school opening up on the Costa del Sol, close to where my parents happened to live at that time. So I remember my mum faxed me an advert of this new hotel school that was called La Roche Marbella. And it was a sister of a Swiss hotel school, and it was opening up literally half an hour down the road from where mum and dad were. So I was like, you know what? I've always loved hotels. I was born in Hong Kong and was very fortunate to live an expat life, and used to hang out in 5-star hotels and country clubs and golf clubs, and very spoiled. And I can remember having like afternoon tea at the Peninsula in Hong Kong. You know, this is the crazy kind of memory I have as a young'un. And so that was actually what was like, you know what, why not try hotels? I didn't have any objection to the idea. It wasn't in the family or anything like that, but I thought, why not? And the rest is history. I basically started, I was one of the first students at La Roche Marbella. And as soon as I started, I knew that I'd found something that I loved and that I excelled at. And that was how it all began.
Amazing. Listen, you've obviously had an amazing career. We're at the Meliá Desert Palm right now. Can you give us just a quick snippet of some of the properties that you've kind of come through over the years?
Oh, gosh. Some of the highlights. Okay, let's see. So I started my career at the Burj Al Arab in Dubai, pre-opening. So before it opened, pre-opening in 1999 as a receptionist. So straight out of hotel school. I didn't know where Dubai was. I didn't know what the Burj Al Arab was. I'd never heard of Jumeirah or Jumeirah International. I couldn't find anything online. There was no pictures. I mean, it's hard to imagine now, but the internet was not yet really that deep, I guess, and people weren't that into it yet. So I couldn't find anything online about the Burj Al Arab. No idea. And ended up taking a risk and moving to this country called the UAE back in 99, and I remember the first time seeing the Burj Al Arab and just going, oh my God, I think I may have made a good decision here. So that's a iconic property that I started with, and funnily enough, on my CV it still gets noticed because it was that kind of a thing. Since then, I mean, I worked in Miami at the Setai, a GHM hotel that's now also quite well known. I was pre-opening for that as front office manager. The Savoy in London also. That was the opposite. I actually was brought in for the closing of that hotel. So I worked there for a year and a half before it closed down for the refurbishment. Closing a hotel after 118 years of operation was one of the hardest things I've ever done. A lot of hoteliers get the opportunity to open hotels. Very few get the opportunity to close a hotel. And trying to retain the staff, you know, how do you keep your team working and motivated until that last day when you close the doors? Emptying the storerooms of 118 years of stuff. It was an amazing experience. I then went on to Beijing with Fairmont, and then Hong Kong with Island Shangri-la. That's another big, well-known sort of flagship property for Shangri-La. So did 4 or 5 years there. And then back to the UAE. So I've been in the UAE now 3 times. This is my 3rd stint back since 1999. And now as general manager of Meliá Desert Palm.
Well, for someone who didn't want to be in hospitality, or didn't know they'd be in hospitality, what a CV.
Yeah.
I suppose for people listening, maybe even the younger people today who are listening who might be looking at a career in hospitality, what would you say, looking back at your career, what are and even looking forward, what are the key attributes you think make someone for the potential to be successful in this space?
It sounds cliche, but you really have to love what you do. It is not an easy job from junior to senior level. There is a lot of hard work. Things don't always go to plan. Things change. There's a lot of moving pieces, and I think you need to be very resilient. You need to love people. It is a people industry. I consider myself still to be a sort of a classic hotelier. You know, I do still truly to this day believe the guest is the reason we're all here. You know, I think hospitality as an industry and as a business has changed dramatically over the past, 20 years. I've now been in the industry 22 years. So let's say over the past 22 years, it is now much more of a business. And I can remember I went to Cornell. I had the opportunity to go to Cornell University, to the hotel school at Cornell for one semester as an exchange. I can remember, I can't remember which class it was in, but I was sitting in a class and the professor at the time said, okay, raise your hand. There was about 40 of us. Raise your hand if you want to go into consulting, like Ernst & Young or something like that. And I would say 85% of the class raised their hand because they're all at Cornell. They're all, you know, the backup as to why you go to Cornell is often because you want to be in that kind of realm. So 85% of the class raised their hands. And then the professor said, okay, and those of you who want to be in hotels, who want to be operational, raise your hand. And of course, then the rest of us did. And the professor said, all of you who raised your hands previously, just remember that without this 15%, you guys wouldn't have anything to do. And that's something that's always rung true with me. You know, it's like at the end of the day, the industry still relies on people wanting to travel, people wanting to stay and have an experience and be taken care of. No matter what your budget is, no matter what your motivation for travel might be, that's what they need at the end of the day.
Listen, look, obviously I'm on the technology side of hotels and we talk about the user experience being everything. So making a seamless digital experience, and whenever I talk to hoteliers, like, it has to be about the guest experience.
It does.
Because we don't have roles here without them.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's a nice tangent into the next topic, which is the UAE, Dubai specifically, has got some of the most incredible properties there are. The guest experience is always evolving. I suppose, how do you look at it at the property you are today? How do you keep ahead of the curve? How do you look at how you can keep enhancing that guest experience?
This hotel has been through a real journey over the past 2 years. When I joined in 2019, it was a beautiful property. It was still as a 4-star hotel, and it had rebranded to Meliá about 12 months earlier. So it was still going through that transition. Anytime there's a rebranding of a property, it's always takes a bit of time. And then, so by the time I joined, we started to get things sort of in line, and then COVID happened. We were very fortunate because we're a boutique hotel. We only have 39 units, although more than 50% of our inventory are villas with private swimming pools. And that really was our saving grace. So we diversified, we pivoted, and we really made the most of our best product, which is our villas. That has actually, we were then very successful in many ways. Unlike others who sadly had 500 beds to fill, we didn't have that challenge. And so that gave us an opportunity. We diversified, we looked more to becoming the staycation destination. Escape Dubai without leaving was our tagline for a while. And that has really helped us to build more of a recognition here in the UAE. How does that help us with guest experience competitively? What we've done now is really, our guest experience doesn't start the moment the guest checks in. Our guest experience starts literally 3 or 4 days before they arrive. We contact them, we talk to them, we understand their motivation for travel or their motivation for stay, because often they're not traveling very far, they're just driving down the road. So why are they making that effort to drive down the road? And it's about really getting to know the guests and why they are here and what they want to do and who are their family, and how can we touch their touch the hearts of their kids? How can we make the parents happy? Are you on your honeymoon? You know, all of these kind of things. The more we learn about the guests before they arrive, the better they will enjoy their experience. And you can actually see it. I'm very proud to say that when was it? Where are we now? We're in October. So July this year, we were sitting at 189 on TripAdvisor out of 784 hotels. Dubai. So 189 on TripAdvisor out of however many it is. Today, we're number 47. So, you know, we had a new guest experience manager join back in April, and we've really, really made guest experience our main focus. And thankfully, the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah, listen, congrats again. And obviously being here today, it is absolutely stunning, and the team are lovely. You mentioned the C word, COVID, and it obviously has had an impact, you know, on our industry. One of the big issues I think a lot of hoteliers have been speaking about has been staff shortages. It's been a big issue. You also mentioned in the Savoy, which obviously, you know, I lived in London for 8 years, so I love it.
Yeah.
You close it down, which is super interesting. And there's a level of keeping the team inspired. So if you mirror those or match those two things up, there's staff shortages now. You've had that. Is there any advice you give to other hoteliers, maybe how you've kept the team inspired, kept them motivated? Because it is a team sport after all.
It is, absolutely. Listen, at the moment, I would say it's probably the most challenging that we've ever seen in the UAE. As I said, I've been here 3 times, so I've seen the employment market and what it does. I wouldn't say COVID was one part of it, but currently Expo is the other part of it. Expo has literally come up and vacuumed 95% of what the normal talent market would be is not there. So suddenly it's a whole new world in terms of employment. So what are we doing? Listen, well, no, I don't think this is only about the fact that you're a small property. I think you can do it also as a larger property. Making your team feel like they're individuals and heard. You know who they are. You know who their family is. You know, it's a culture that comes from the top, and I really try and distill it into my leaders and into all of the team. Get to know who you're dealing with. Get to know who's working with you, and be very, very engage with that person on an individual level. We all have bad days. We all have things going on at home. As much as when you're joining the hospitality industry, you're told that work is like being on a stage. Maybe that's where my drama background comes from. You know, when you walk into your shift, even as a waitress, no matter what happened that morning, you must walk in with a smile on your face, and treat every guest like they're your first guest, and that you must make them feel like $1 million. In order to do that, you need to have the support. You need to have a salary that you feel pays you well, but it's also about, you know, you need to enjoy working with the people you work with. It's about removing what could sometimes be seen as a toxic environment. What makes an environment toxic? It could be many, many things, but getting rid of that, getting rid of the egos, and just working together like a family. And if you can do that, no matter how big or how small you are, you will retain significantly more people, because people will work and keep working, even if they feel like they're maybe not getting paid enough. If they like you and they like their family, they won't jump so quickly. But if they're not liking what they do and you're not paying them right, they'll go to Expo in a heartbeat, basically.
And listen, I loved your words on culture comes from the top, because it is, right? They look Absolutely. At you, and your managers will look at you, and it'll just be a domino effect down. Yeah. Talking on that advice. Let's look at it twofold. The first is potentially what's the best bit of advice you got maybe as you were coming up through the ranks, and now that you are at the top and you were talking to a younger hotelier, what would be the advice you'd pass down? Would it be the same?
The piece of advice that stands out the most, and I'm sure I've had plenty of good snippets, but the one that I seem to pull out all the time, well, not all the time, regularly, is it's better to beg for forgiveness than it is to beg for permission. Now, sometimes in a corporate world, Some people may not agree. You know, it doesn't always work. It doesn't. But when it comes to certain decision making and things like that, you know what? Sometimes that phrase just goes through my head, and it's like, would I rather beg for forgiveness, or would I rather beg for permission? And you know that it becomes a sort of a decision making factor. And sometimes permission is the only way to go. But sometimes, you know what? If it's critical, if it's about people, if it's about business and about doing the right thing, sometimes you have to make that decision. And more junior, it doesn't come up. More senior, it becomes more and more relevant. And yeah, I won't name the person who gave me that piece of advice, but it was a GM at the time, and I'm still very close to him these days as well.
And I never got to GM level. I left kind of hotels a couple of years ago. But maybe for you, passing on advice to someone who's a younger hotelier coming up who's not a GM, right, or is not a manager. Because what I felt, and just give insight, is I felt it was very like done by tenure rather than meritocracy. So it's like if you were there for 10 years, you got the next position, rather than you might have put in more effort, you might have been a potentially a better fit for that role, but because so it's like the assistant front office manager, duty manager.
Yeah,
you know how it works, and like. Is that still the case? Am I a bit too out of the scene now, or would you give advice to a younger person to say stick in there, or you know?
I think it's a combination of. It's almost like a combination of both extremes. Now you do still get that he's been there 10 years. It's time. I don't particularly agree with that. I don't think that just because you've been doing a job for 10 years means you're ready for the next role. But I think you also have the other extreme, that you do have. The younger generations who are coming up through hotel schools who literally think they can be GM tomorrow. And that isn't the answer. You know, there needs to be a balance. I mean, I did the degree, I did the hospitality degree. I then started as a receptionist, and I've worked my way up. What have I gained from that? No one can say to me, you don't know what you're talking about, Natalie, because I've literally been there and done that. I've lived in a shared accommodation in the middle of the desert earning very little money. I've been there. I'm living proof that you can, with hard work, positivity, resilience, people skills, you can grow. As a GM now, talking to the younger generation, I would probably say, learn to have a short-term memory for bad things. Because you will have bad days. There will be days when a guest screams in your face. There will be days when you drop a pile of dirty dishes on your boss's foot. You know, whatever it might be, there will be days when you're just like, oh my God, I've had such a bad day. What you need to learn is you need to reset. You need to somehow find something that means once you go to bed, you wake up the next morning, and whoever you had an argument with, whatever it was, forget it. You need to be able to let it go. And that really has been something that has helped me to keep moving forward. Because if you keep thinking about the past, you're going to get sick of the industry, because it's hard. But if you reset and look again to the future and look for the opportunities and the positivity, you will naturally be motivated to keep going. And the other piece of advice I have is, if you want to be promoted, start acting like the position you want to be in. Prove you can do it. Because if you can prove you can do it, then you're the obvious one to be given that opportunity. If you just sit there and grumble and say, oh, but I want it, I've been here for 5 years. Well, if you've been here for 5 years and you haven't yet been promoted, what are you doing wrong? You know, so don't wait for someone to give you the title. If you think you're ready to do it, start doing it.
Listen, I think for me, it's because I love hospitality. I think it's a great career. I just think there's so many younger people now who aren't even looking at it as a career. And then you've got great talent. I went to the Shannon College of Hotel Management. There's like very few of my years still operationally in hotels. They've gone to Google, or they've gone to KPMG, or they've gone to tech startups, or you know, they've not stayed in hospitality. And one of my thinkings is it because we're not bringing them up through the ranks quicker, or giving them more exciting roles, or keeping it where it's tenure over talent? I don't know. That's just one of the reasons I'm doing the podcast, is to open up hospitality to younger individuals to see it as an amazing career. I travel the world, like you just mentioned yours. I think it's amazing, but there seems to be a disconnect for some reason.
I think in the good old days, It was seen as a glamorous career. These days, not so much, maybe. But yeah, it's the great thing about it is that it is a broad management experience as well. You know, you get to meet amazing people, you get to travel great places, but you also get like, I'm conversed in accounting, I'm conversed in economics, I'm conversed in communications, I'm conversed in human resources. I'm now a very, very broadly trained human being, and I have wealth of experience and knowledge and relationships and network. I mean, my network over the 22 years is, you can imagine, that brings so much value to my life. But again, I love it. And I think that is it. It's a shame that there aren't more young people, and I think the industry is learning from it. Like, for example, I know Mandarin Oriental. What they've done now is they have, so their corporate ex-com are now all required, not even encouraged, but required to select millennial management trainees to work alongside them. Yeah? So, I mean, you go through a rigorous process to get that position, and once you get that position, it's like, wow, I'm working with the COO of Mandarin Oriental. But the whole point of them doing it was really to get the old fogies at the top to listen more to what the younger generation is doing and understanding and wanting. And yeah, we have to somehow make this connection, and I think it's happening. It's just maybe not happening as quickly. But the digital aspect, I think, is really a big part of the way the hotel industry is going to move forward.
Yeah, no, listen, it has to move to like a mobile first experience, right?
Yeah.
Just look at any millennials and Gen Zs nowadays. Obviously, I went off on a tangent, so apologies about that. But back to the questions. We've seen, obviously, over the last year, so much has changed, I think probably forever in hospitality. Like, certainly one of those moments we'll all look back on. If you were to maybe look at the future, what you think the challenges that we've just seen, how they might impact the next couple of years and even further.
Gazing into my crystal ball, Mark, I think we're already seeing it. I think it's going to, people will still travel. Definitely. People will still go out and dine. People will still go on holiday. People are, the resilience of the industry has already proven itself. And Dubai at the moment, occupancies that they haven't seen in 18 months. Atlanta's sitting at 95%, you know, these kind of things is it shows that it's still there. But I think people are now much more inclined to, you know, think about family first, think about looking for experiences. You know, if I'm a businessman who's going to go for a week, maybe I will consider going for 10 days and bring my family along for the weekend, if I can afford to, obviously, making it more that trendy word, bleisure. So rather than a business trip or a leisure trip, trying to combine both, trying to make more out of it. Also, something we've definitely seen is the ability to work from anywhere. And of course, the UAE is really, really driving this at the moment with the whole work from anywhere visas and things like that. And you know what? we actually had a lot of guests literally move in for 4 months, especially when schooling was online, because they just moved their entire family here and they worked from home, they schooled from home, and they did it here in Dubai rather than wherever they were in a small apartment in Berlin or whatever. That whole concept of being able to work from anywhere, and the way that that so much more business lifestyle has moved to digital. You know, we could Zoom anyone nowadays. You never used to think, like, I would never in a million years have done a Zoom interview with a colleague, with a potential candidate based in Dubai. Why would I? I can get them to come here. Now, I'm absolutely happy to do that. So in that way, it's open up that international globalization much, much more. But the flip side to that is, well, if I can do it over Zoom, why bother traveling? So again, it's a crystal ball situation, Mark. I don't know which way it's going to go, and there are going to be challenges whichever way it goes. But the companies that are able to adapt quickly and realize what's going on and especially the bigger companies that may have this global coverage, but it's that whole think globally but act locally. Be aware of what's happening in your micro market as much as what's happening on a global scale.
And you've clearly done it perfectly. You're adapted in the short term, keeping an eye on what might happen in the long term, right? Like if you look at, any of the major events, 9/11, 2008, people to some extent have a short-term memory and things tend to go back to some level of normality. I'm a big believer that, especially on the business side, if you're not getting on the plane to see your top clients, you're going to lose out long term. You can't translate this over Zoom, becoming friends with people in the relationship. Last question before we're going to do a little bit of a quick fire. This podcast is all about the individual.
Yep.
It's about you. You've obviously had an incredible career to date. Thank you for taking time out of your day today to speak with me. But what would have been your career highlight thus far?
Oh, I always hate this question. Honestly, every new adventure is the career highlight of the time. I really can't. I mean, getting a job in a country I'd never heard of and working for a 7-star hotel, Burj Al Arab, highlight. Moving to Hong Kong to join Shangri-la as in this flagship property, highlight. My first GM role here at the Meliá Desert Palm, highlight. Being shortlisted for general manager 2 weeks ago by Hotelier Middle East of the World, highlight. So I can't put it down to one. I really, really can't. I wish I could, but I have so many incredible experiences and memories from it. I couldn't point to one only.
A little bit of a quick fire.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to pick between one or the other.
Okay.
So, holiday, sun or snow?
Sun.
Vacation, city or resort?
City.
Hotel, brand or independent?
Independent.
And then 2 more. Your favorite destination that you've been thus far. You can pick a Meliá hotel. It has to be a destination with your favorite hotel.
Wow. Favorite destination is Bali, but I can't give you a hotel there because we stayed in like a villa type concept. But yeah, no, I love Bali. Bali is like my soul sister.
I love it. It's on my bucket list. And now that COVID is hopefully ending, where is the first place you want to go for a couple of days, or your next trip? What's the next bucket list to tick off?
My husband and I are talking about going to New York for Christmas, and I would love to, but Christmas is quite a busy time here in the hotel, so I'm not sure it's going to happen. And I've always wanted to do, I'm a big Asia fan, so I've always wanted to go to Cambodia and do the temples and all of that kind of thing as well, I think.
Amazing. Nathalie, thank you so much for sitting down. Really love this.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the time today.